The Great Hall of the Galactic Concordance stretched higher than any building on Earth. Daejung Park stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by beings from 47 different worlds. Some had scales, others had fur or feathers. A few were just clouds of gas held together by force fields. They all looked down at him with the same expression: doubt. Daejung had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now. 3 long years of meetings, discussions, and endless waiting. Humanity wanted to join the Concordance, to be part of the great alliance of civilized worlds. But the elder races kept saying no. They had 100 different reasons. Humans were too young, too violent, too emotional. They fought too many wars. They couldn't be trusted with advanced technology. Today was supposed to be different. Today was the final decision. Supreme Arbiter Tholnax rose from his seat. He was a Vrylok, a being that looked like a mantis made of silver metal. His species had been traveling the stars for 10,000 years. They considered themselves the guardians of galactic civilization. Ambassador Park, Tholnax's voice echoed through translators. We have reviewed your petition once more. The Concordance remains unconvinced that humanity is ready for membership. Daejung felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face calm. He had been a military strategist before becoming a diplomat. He knew how to control his emotions. May I ask what concerns remain? He said carefully. All of them, replied Tholnax. Your species has only been in space for 300 years. You still fight among yourselves. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. You cling to primitive technology even when better options exist. You are, in every measurable way, not ready. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Daejung saw some aliens nodding. Others made gestures he had learned meant the same thing. However, Tholnax continued, and the chamber fell silent. There is a path forward. The trials of capability. Daejung had heard whispers about the trials. They were legendary, created thousands of years ago as a way for new species to prove themselves. But no one had attempted them in centuries. The trials consist of 7 challenges, Tholnax explained, each one designed to test a different aspect of civilization: navigation, diplomacy, innovation, culture, communication, combat, and wisdom. Complete all 7, and humanity will be granted immediate membership. Fail even one, and your petition will be denied for the next century. How many species have completed all 7? Daejung asked. None, said Tholnax. The highest number completed is 3 by the Kethrin Collective, 4,200 years ago. Most species fail at the first trial. We believe humans will do the same. Daejung looked around the chamber. He saw the faces of beings who had decided humanity would fail before they even tried. They weren't offering a real chance. They were offering a way to reject humanity that looked fair. Back on Earth, the government had given Daejung clear instructions. Be diplomatic. Don't make promises we can't keep. If they say no, accept it gracefully and try again in a few years. But Daejung had also been a soldier. He had led troops through impossible situations. He knew that sometimes the only way forward was to say yes to the impossible and figure out how to do it later. We accept, he said. The chamber erupted in noise. Aliens clicked, buzzed, and spoke in languages Daejung couldn't understand, even with his translator. Tholnax raised one of his blade-like arms for silence. You accept? Just like that? Without consulting your government? Without knowing what the trials entail? Yes, Daejung said firmly. Humanity didn't come this far by being afraid of challenges. We accept your trials. All 7 of them. For the first time, Daejung saw something like surprise on Tholnax's alien features. Very well, the Vrylok said slowly. The first trial will begin in 1 standard week. You will navigate the Void Maze. A hologram appeared above the chamber, showing a region of space that looked like a wound in reality. Swirling clouds of dark matter twisted around each other, shot through with streams of radiation. The void maze exists at the edge of concordant space, explained Tholnax. It is a region where normal space breaks down. Sensors don't work properly. Navigation systems fail. 17 different species have sent ships into the maze. None returned. If humanity can send a ship through the maze and emerge on the other side, you will pass the first trial. What's the catch? Asked Dae-jung. The catch, as you say, is survival. Based on our calculations, any ship entering the void maze has a 3% chance of making it through. Most likely, your ship will be torn apart by gravitational forces or lost forever in unstable space. Dae-jung nodded slowly. So we need to be in the 3%. You need to be the first ever, corrected Tholnax. No ship has successfully navigated the maze, not in all of recorded history. Then I guess it's time someone did, said Dae-jung. Tholnax tilted his head. You seem confident, Ambassador. May I ask why? Dae-jung smiled. Because humanity has a long tradition of doing things everyone else says are impossible. We flew before we understood aerodynamics. We went to space before we had computers. We crossed oceans in wooden boats before we could explain why boats float. We're very good at figuring things out as we go. That is not confidence, said Tholnax coldly. That is recklessness. Maybe, agreed Dae-jung. But it's gotten us this far. You wanted to see what humanity can do? Yes, go ahead. I'd be happy to see a few more variations. Throw everything you've got at us. We'll surprise you. The phrase was odd, and the translator struggled with it for a moment. But Dae-jung's meaning was clear. He wasn't just accepting the challenge, he was welcoming it. He was asking for more. Tholnax stared at him for a long moment. Your confidence is noted, Ambassador Park. We shall see if it is justified. Prepare your ship. The trial begins in 7 days. The concordance will be watching. We'll put on a good show, promised Dae-jung. As the session ended and aliens began filing out of the chamber, a few approached Dae-jung. They wished him luck. Some seemed genuine. Others seemed to be saying goodbye to a dead man walking. Dae-jung stood alone in the emptying chamber and pulled out his communication device. He needed to call Earth. He needed to talk to the engineers and pilots. He needed to tell them what he had just agreed to. Most of all, he needed to call Hyun-woo Choi. If anyone could get a ship through impossible space, it would be Hyun-woo. The man had kept the International Space Station running with duct tape and spare parts. He could work miracles with machines. The call connected. Hyun-woo's face appeared, smiling as always. Ambassador, how did it go? We're in, said Dae-jung, but we've got work to do, a lot of work. What kind of work? The kind where we navigate through a region of space that's killed everyone who tried. We've got a week to figure it out. Hyun-woo's smile grew wider. Finally, something interesting. When do I start? Dae-jung laughed despite himself. Yes, they would figure this out. They always did. The Indomitable floated at the edge of the void maze, and from this distance it looked like someone had torn a hole in space itself. Dark clouds of matter swirled in patterns that made no sense. Lightning that wasn't really lightning flashed between them. Sensors showed readings that changed every second, contradicting themselves. Hyun-woo Choi stood in the engineering bay, surrounded by equipment that made the other engineers nervous. On the walls hung old-style control panels with physical switches and dials. Boxes of spare parts sat stacked in corners. And in the center of the bay, Hyun-woo was installing something that looked like it belonged in a museum. Chemical rocket thrusters. You can't be serious, said Ji-woo Kim, the ship's xenobiologist. She had come down to see what Hyun-woo was doing. Those things are 200 years old. 250, corrected Hyun-woo cheerfully. I got them from the Smithsonian. They're beautiful. They're ancient. They're simple, said Hyun-woo. He patted one of the rockets fondly. Look, here's the problem. The Concordance expects us to use quantum shields and predictive navigation. All the fancy stuff that every advanced species uses, but that's exactly what failed for the other 17 ships. So, your solution is to use older technology? My solution is to use technology that doesn't rely on complex electronics, explained Hyun-woo. The void maze scrambles sensors and computers, but it can't scramble a chemical reaction. Fire plus fuel equals thrust. Always has, always will. Physics doesn't change just because space gets weird. Ji-woo looked skeptical, but she knew better than to argue with Hyun-woo about engineering. The man had gotten them out of too many tight spots. On the bridge, Tae-Yang Lee was having a similar conversation with the ship's AI. Manual controls? The AI asked. Captain Lee, I must protest. Manual piloting is inefficient and dangerous. My reaction time is— I know, interrupted Tae-Yang. You're faster than me, smarter than me, better at calculations. But you're also electronic, and electronics don't work right in the maze. I need backup controls, real physical controls that I can use if you go offline. The AI was silent for a moment, processing. The probability of my systems failing is less than 1%. Great, said Tae-Yang. But the probability of any ship making it through the maze is 3% according to Concordance calculations. Something about their approach isn't working, so we're trying something different. Tae-Yang had been a racing pilot before joining the space program. He had flown in competitions where split-second decisions meant the difference between winning and crashing. He trusted computers, but he trusted his instincts more. Soo-Bin Han, the communications officer, was the only one who seemed excited about the plan. She had spent the week studying human history, looking at all the times humans had succeeded by doing things the hard way. Did you know, she said to anyone who would listen, that the Apollo astronauts had a manual backup system for everything? They could fly their ship with a sextant and a clock if they had to. And they made it to the moon and back. The moon is not the void maze, pointed out one of the other crew members. No, agreed Soo-Bin, but the principle is the same. When things get complicated, sometimes you need simple solutions. The day of the trial arrived. Observers from every concordant species filled the monitoring stations. They watched through long-range sensors as the Indomitable approached the maze. Tholnax was there, along with another Vrylock named Velkith. Velkith was an admiral, and he looked even more skeptical than Tholnax. They'll turn back, predicted Velkith. Once they see the maze up close, they'll realize it's suicide. Perhaps, said Tholnax. But the human ambassador seemed very confident. Confidence is not the same as competence. On the Indomitable, Daejung sat in the observer's seat on the bridge. He wasn't part of the crew, but he had insisted on being there. If this was going to fail, he wanted to fail with them. Entering the maze in 30 seconds, announced the AI. Its voice was calm and professional. All systems operating normally. Quantum shields at maximum. Navigation algorithms ready. Secondary systems check, called Hyun-woo from engineering. All manual backups ready, confirmed Tae-Yang. Chemical thrusters primed, physical controls responding. The ship crossed the boundary into the void maze. For exactly 4 seconds, everything worked fine. Then reality stopped making sense. The lights flickered. The AI's voice broke up into static. Every screen on the bridge went dark, then lit up again, showing gibberish. The ship lurched sideways as if pushed by a giant hand. Electromagnetic storm, Hyun-woo's voice crackled over the internal speakers. It's worse than we thought. Main systems are going haywire. Switch to manual, ordered Tae-Yang. His hands were already moving to the physical controls. Joysticks and levers instead of touch screens. Dials and gauges instead of holographic displays. Are you insane? Shouted the AI before its voice cut out completely. Suddenly, Tae-Yang was flying blind, almost blind. He still had the viewport, showing him the swirling chaos outside. He still had the analog altimeter showing his position relative to the maze's center, and he still had his instincts. The ship shuddered as another wave of energy hit it. On the monitoring stations outside the maze, every observer saw the Indomitable's signal start to break up, just like the 17 ships before it. "They're lost," said Velkith, "just like all the others." But inside the ship, Tae Yang was working. He couldn't use sensors, so he used his eyes. He watched the patterns of the energy clouds, looking for the spaces between them. He fired the chemical thrusters in short bursts, nudging the ship left, then right, then diving under a wall of dark matter. It was like threading a needle while riding a roller coaster, but it was also like racing, and Tae Yang had always been good at racing. "Hyunwoo," he called out, "how are the thrusters holding up?" "Perfect," came the reply. "Chemical reactions don't care about electromagnetic interference. We've got plenty of fuel." "Good, because I'm going to use a lot of it." For 2 hours, Tai Yang flew the ship through the impossible. He couldn't calculate safe paths, so he felt them. When the ship started to shake, he changed direction. When the energy readings on his analog gauges spiked, he dove or climbed. He flew like a human, using intuition and reflexes instead of logic and algorithms. Ji-woo, strapped into her seat, watched in amazement. "How are you doing this?" "I have no idea," admitted Tae Yang, sweat running down his face. "I'm making it up as I go." Dae-jung watched silently. This was what he had bet on. Not superior technology, not better calculations. Just human ability to adapt and improvise. Suddenly, the clouds around them began to thin. The energy reading started to stabilize. And then, like coming out of a tunnel, the Indomitable burst out of the void maze into normal space. Every system came back online at once. The AI's voice returned. We made it? How did we make it?" Tai Yang slumped in his seat, exhausted. Chemistry and stubbornness. At the monitoring stations, silence fell over the observers. They stared at their screens, not quite believing what they were seeing. The Indomitable's signal was clear and strong. The ship was intact. The crew was alive. Velkith turned to Thalnax, his voice filled with confusion. "That's impossible. The maze should have destroyed them." "And yet they survived," said Thalnax quietly. "They succeeded where every other species failed." "How?" A junior officer spoke up nervously. "Sir, according to our readings, they use manual piloting and chemical propulsion for most of the journey. Their computer systems were offline." "Manual piloting?" Velkith sounded shocked. "Through the maze? That's primitive." "It worked," pointed out Thalnax. He was beginning to understand something. The humans hadn't succeeded despite their primitive methods. They had succeeded because of them. On the Indomitable, Su-bin was already opening a communication channel. Dae-jung's face appeared on screens across the concordance. "Trial 1 complete," he announced. His voice was tired but triumphant. "The void maze has been navigated. Where's Trial 2? In the monitoring station, Thalnax felt something he rarely experienced. Surprise. These humans were not what he expected. Not at all. Station Omega-7 hung in the darkness between two war zones. On one side, the Kresh. On the other, the Ven. They had been fighting for 80 years, and no one could remember exactly why anymore. Ji-woo Kim stood at the airlock preparing to board a Kresh transport ship. She wore no armor, carried no weapons, just her translator, her medical bag, and a genuine smile. "This is foolish," said Jin-ho Song, the anthropologist assigned to help her. He was 20 years older than Ji-woo and far more cautious. "The Concordance has tried to end this war for decades. They've sent negotiators, peacekeepers, even economic sanctions. Nothing worked." "That's because they tried to solve it like a puzzle," said Ji-woo. "Wars aren't puzzles. They're tragedies filled with people." The Kresh aren't people. They're insectoids. Their brains work completely differently from ours. They have brains, said Jiwoo simply. That's enough. The Concordance had been clear about Trial 2. End the Kresh War through diplomatic means. No military intervention, no bribery, just negotiation. They expected it to be impossible. The Kresh and Ven had rejected every peace proposal ever offered. But Jiwoo hadn't come to make proposals. She had come to listen. The Kresh transport brought her to their colony world. The landscape was harsh, all red rocks and thin atmosphere. The Kresh themselves stood about 4 feet tall, with 6 legs, 4 arms, and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Their chittering language sounded like wind through dry grass. The Kresh commander, Kreshatil, met her at the landing pad. You are the human negotiator? I'm Jiwoo. I'm here to understand. Understand what? The Ven killed our people. We will kill theirs. This is simple. Maybe, said Jiwoo. But can I stay with your people for a while? Learn about you? I won't ask about the war if you don't want to talk about it. Kreshtil's antennae twitched in what Jiwoo's research suggested was confusion. Stay? Here? Why? Because I can't understand the Kresh from a space station. I need to see how you live, what you care about, what makes you happy or sad. No negotiator had ever asked this before. Kreshatil didn't know what to say, so he simply allowed it. Jiwoo spent 3 weeks living with the Kresh. She learned their language beyond what translators could teach. She watched their festivals and ceremonies. She played with Kresh children who were fascinated by her strange, soft hands. She even learned to eat their food, though it tasted like spicy dirt to her human tongue. Most importantly, she attended a Kresh funeral. The Kresh didn't bury their dead. They burned them at sunset, singing a song that lasted all night. The ashes were then scattered in patterns on the ground, specific patterns that told the story of the dead person's life. Jiwoo watched carefully, recording everything. Then she did something unusual. She asked Kreshatil if she could attend a Ven funeral too. That's insane, said Jinho over the communicator. The Ven will kill you. They might, agreed Jiwoo. Or they might be curious why a human wants to learn about them. The Ven were also insectoids, but different from the Kresh. Where the Kresh were reddish-brown, the Ven were blue-green. Where the Kresh clicked and chittered, the Ven hummed and whistled. But they were still people. They still loved, fought, hoped, and grieved. The Ven commander, Venzith, was even more suspicious than Kreshatil had been. Why should we trust a human? You shouldn't, said Jiwoo honestly. You don't know me, but I'd like to know you. I've lived with the Kresh. Now I'd like to live with the Ven. Learn your ways, understand your culture. You lived with the Kresh. Our enemies. I lived with people, corrected Jiwoo. They're only enemies because of this war. Before the war, they were just people. So are you. Venzith eventually allowed it, though she assigned guards to watch Jiwoo constantly. Jiwoo spent another 3 weeks with the Ven. She learned their songs and dances. She watched their craftspeople create beautiful art from glass. She laughed with Ven teenagers who made jokes she barely understood, and she attended a Ven funeral. The Ven also burned their dead at sunset. They also sang all night, and they also scattered the ashes in patterns on the ground. But the patterns were different. The songs were different. Everything looked different. Almost everything. Jiwoo brought both recordings back to Station Omega 7. She called Subin Han, the communications officer from the Indomitable, to help her analyze them. They spent days comparing the ceremonies, running linguistic analyses, studying cultural records. Look at this, said Subin, pointing at her screen. The Kresh word for this funeral pattern, it translates as journey to ancestors. But the Ven word for their pattern translates as return to soil. Completely different concepts. But watch the patterns themselves, said Jiwoo. She played both recordings side by side. The Kresh draw spirals. The Ven draw circles, different but they're covering the same general area, finished Subin. They're doing the same thing, just in different styles. Jiwoo nodded slowly. The concordance records say the war started at a disputed colony. Both species claimed it. There was a battle. Many died on both sides. The survivors tried to hold funerals according to their traditions. And, Subin prompted, and the Kresh saw the Ven doing their circular patterns. To the Kresh, circles over graves mean trapping the dead in their culture. It's a terrible insult. The Ven saw the Kresh doing spiral patterns. To the Ven, spirals over graves mean driving away the spirit. Also a terrible insult. Subin's eyes widened. They each thought the other was desecrating their dead. Exactly. It wasn't politics or territory. It was a misunderstanding about how to honor the dead. Both sides were grieving, and both sides thought the other was being deliberately cruel. That's what started the war. So how do we end it? Jiwoo smiled. We let them honor their dead properly. The next day, Jiwoo did something that made the concordance observers nervous. She invited both Kreshtil and Venzith to Station Omega 7, together, in the same room. This will end in bloodshed, predicted Thalnax. But when the two commanders arrived, they found something unexpected. Jiwoo had created a memorial garden. In it were holographic images of every soldier who had died in the war, both Kresh and Ven. Thousands of faces. What is this? Demanded Kreshtil. A place to remember, said Jiwoo quietly. I know why you're fighting. You think the Ven insulted your dead. They think you insulted theirs. But you were both just following your own traditions. Neither of you meant disrespect. She showed them the recordings, explained the patterns, translated the meanings. Both commanders watched in silence. We didn't know, whispered Venzith finally. We thought they were monsters. We thought the same, said Kreshtil. His voice was hollow. 80 years. 80 years of war over a misunderstanding. You can't undo the past, said Jiwoo gently, but you can honor it properly. Let me help you create a ceremony, one that respects both traditions. Let the dead rest in peace. Over the next month, Jiwoo and Subin worked with both species to create a new funeral ceremony. It combined elements of both cultures, spirals and circles together, creating a pattern that meant journey home in both languages. The song was half Kresh chittering, half Ven humming, creating a harmony that neither species had heard before. They held the first ceremony at the disputed colony where the war began. Representatives from both species attended. Yuna Bai, the Indomitable's medical officer, was there too. She had been treating wounded from both sides, and she brought some of them to the ceremony in wheelchairs and on stretchers. As the sun set, both species sang together. As the ashes scattered in the new pattern, both species wept. They wept for their dead. They wept for the 80 years of hatred. They wept for the future they had almost lost. When it was over, Kreshtil and Venzith stood together in silence. Then, slowly, they reached out and touched hands, or what passed for hands in their species. Peace? Asked Venzith. Peace, agreed Kreshtil. The concordance observers could hardly believe it. In 3 months, a human had done what their best negotiators couldn't do in decades. She had ended a war not with treaties or threats, but with understanding. How? Asked Velkith. The Vrylok admiral seemed genuinely baffled. She lived with them, said Thalnax slowly. She didn't study them from a distance. She ate their food, learned their songs, played with their children. She treated them as people, not as problems to solve. That's not logical, protested Velkith. That's emotional. Yes, agreed Thalnax. Perhaps that's the point. On Station Omega 7, Dae Jung received the news. Trial 2 was complete. The war was over. Jiwoo looked exhausted but happy. "Good work," he told her. "It wasn't work," she said. "It was just being human." Dae-jung smiled. That was exactly what humanity needed to show the galaxy. The emergency session of the Concordance was not going well for humanity. Tholnak stood before the council, and his voice was cold with anger. "The humans have completed 2 trials. This is unprecedented. It's also suspicious." "Suspicious how?" asked an observer from the Methane Collective, a species that lived in gas clouds. "They're cheating somehow," insisted Velkith. "No species should be able to navigate the Void Maze or end the Kresh War so easily. They must have help, or they're lying about their results." Dae-jung stepped forward. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the steel beneath it. "Are you accusing humanity of dishonesty?" "I'm saying your success is too convenient," said Velkith. "Then make it less convenient," said Dae-jung. "Give us all 5 remaining trials at once, right now. If we're cheating, we'll fail. If we're not, we'll show you exactly what humanity can do." The chamber erupted in noise. No species had ever attempted more than 1 trial at a time. It was considered impossible. The trials were designed to be completed over years, even decades. Tholnax raised his hand for silence. When he spoke, there was something in his voice that might have been respect, or maybe just curiosity. "You keep surprising us, Ambassador Park. Every time we think we understand humans, you do something unexpected. Very well, all 5 trials, starting immediately. But know this, if you fail even one, you fail them all." "Understood," said Dae-jung. Then he smiled that confident smile that was becoming famous across the galaxy. "Yes, go ahead. I'd be happy to see a few more variations. Hit us with everything you've got." Within hours, the assignments went out. 5 different human teams, 5 different challenges, 30 days to complete them all. Trial 3 went to Sang-woo Kang, a physicist who had been teaching at university before volunteering for the space program. The challenge: create a new form of energy that the Concordance had never seen before. Sang-woo looked at the challenge and laughed. "They want new energy, that's all?" "That's impossible," said his assistant. "Every possible energy source has been discovered. Matter-antimatter reactions, zero-point energy, quantum fusion. The Concordance has it all." "They have it all because they only look forward," said Sang-woo. He was already pulling up old research files on his computer. "But humans, we're pack rats. We keep everything, even the failures." He spent 3 days going through abandoned experiments. Research that had been tried and discarded, ideas that hadn't worked, mistakes that had been forgotten. Then he found it. A paper from 2089 about quantum entanglement communication. The research had been abandoned because it couldn't transmit information faster than light. But Sang-woo saw something the original researchers had missed. "It doesn't transmit information," he explained to Dae-jung over video call. "But it does transmit state changes instantly. If we use those state changes to modulate a power field..." "In simpler words, please," said Dae-jung. "We can create energy echoes. When you generate power in one place, an echo appears in another place instantly. No transmission, no delay, no energy loss. The Concordance has quantum communication, but they never thought to use it for power distribution." It wasn't new energy. It was a new way to move energy, but it was something the Concordance had never seen, and it was based on principles they already knew. Within 2 weeks, Sang-woo had a working prototype. Trial 4 went to Kyung-soo Min, a linguist and first contact specialist. The challenge: communicate with the whisper entities, beings of pure thought that existed in a dimension humans could barely detect. The Concordance had been trying to talk to the whispers for 300 years. They had sent mathematical proofs, symbolic logic, everything that made sense to rational minds. The whispers never responded. Kyung-soo tried something different. He talked to them, just talked, for hours, for days, For 11 days straight, without sleeping, he sat in the communication chamber and spoke. He told them about Earth, about his childhood, about the first time he saw the stars, about humanity's struggles and triumphs. He talked until his voice was raw and his mind was foggy with exhaustion. On the 11th day, the whispers responded. Their message was simple. Finally, someone who doesn't stop talking. Kyung-soo laughed so hard he cried. You could hear us all along? Always, the whispers said. But the others only send data. They ask questions and wait for answers. They don't converse. We thought no one knew how. Humans are good at not shutting up, said Kyung-soo. It's kind of our thing. The whispers taught him their language. It was based on persistence and repetition, on wearing down barriers through constant contact. Exactly how humans learned most things. Trial 5 went to Nari. Oh, a terraforming engineer. The challenge, make a dead world livable in 30 days. The Concordance gave her a planet that was nothing but rock and dust. No atmosphere, no water, no life. Standard terraforming took decades. Nari had 1 month. She didn't try to terraform it. Instead, she built habitats. Using local materials, rapid construction techniques, and designs borrowed from early Mars colonies, she created a dozen sealed environments. Each one could support different types of life. It's not a terraformed planet, she admitted to the inspectors, but people can live here safely and comfortably, and in 50 years these habitats will have spread enough that the planet will terraform itself naturally. Sometimes you don't need to change everything at once. You just need to start the process. The Concordance inspectors looked at each other. The challenge had been to make the world livable. They had assumed that meant changing the whole planet. But Nari had found a different path to the same goal. It wasn't the expected solution, but it worked. Trial 6 was perhaps the strangest. Create art that moves all 47 concordant species emotionally. Something that could make beings with completely different minds and cultures all feel the same thing. Ye-Jin Yu was a composer and mathematician. She looked at the challenge and saw an equation. What did all species have in common? What experience was universal? Stars. Every species, no matter where they came from, looked up at stars. Every species had witnessed a supernova, the death of a star. It was the one cosmic event that was exactly the same for everyone. Ye-Jin spent weeks analyzing the mathematical patterns of supernovas, the way energy spread, the rhythm of the explosion, the frequencies of light released. Then she turned those patterns into music. It wasn't a song in any traditional sense. It was pure mathematics expressed as sound. The rhythm of destruction and creation, the frequency of light becoming sound waves. Every species' instruments could play it. Every species' ears could hear it. When it premiered before the Concordance, something unprecedented happened. Every species in attendance reacted. Some cried, some gasped, some went very still, but they all felt it, the terrible beauty of a star dying, the cosmic truth that even the greatest things end, but ending creates new beginnings. For the first time in Concordance history, every species experienced the same emotion together. Tholnak sat in the audience, and his compound eyes reflected the lights of the performance. He had never cried before. He hadn't known his species could cry. But water dripped from his eyes as the final notes faded. "How?" he whispered. "How did she do this?" "She found what we all share," said another counselor, also weeping. "She reminded us that we're all children of the stars." Daejung watched the results come in from his quarters. 4 trials complete, 4 successes. Now only Trial 7 remained, personal combat with Valak the Unbeaten, the Concordance's champion. He stood and looked at himself in the mirror. He was 58 years old. He had gray hair and old scars from his military days. He wasn't a warrior anymore. He was a diplomat. But he had made a promise. He had accepted all 7 trials. His communicator beeped. It was Hyun Woo. Ambassador, you don't have to do this. We've proven enough. Send Taeyang or one of the soldiers. Someone younger. No, said Dae-jung quietly. I said humanity would complete all 7 trials. I'm humanity's representative. This one is mine. He walked to the transport ship that would take him to the grand arena. As he walked, he thought about everything that had led to this moment. All the impossible things humanity had done. All the challenges they had faced. They had flown through the void maze when everyone said it was impossible. They had ended a war through understanding rather than force. They had innovated, communicated, created, and inspired. Now he just had to fight a warrior who had never lost in 50 years. And somehow, he had to win. The ship took off, carrying him toward the final trial. The Grand Arena was older than most civilizations. It had been built 10,000 years ago, carved from a single asteroid and suspended in space where all species could watch. Today, billions watched from across the galaxy as Ambassador Dae-jung Park walked onto the fighting ground. He wore simple clothes, no armor, no weapons, just the diplomatic uniform of Earth. Across from him stood Valak the Unbeaten. Valak was 8 feet tall, covered in scales harder than steel. His species, the Korath, were bred for war, 4 arms, each ending in claws, eyes that could track the fastest movements, reflexes that were literally superhuman. He had defended the Concordance's honor for 50 years, and he had never lost. You don't have to do this, Valak said. His voice was surprisingly gentle for such a massive warrior. I've watched your species complete the other trials. You've proven yourselves. Withdraw with honor. Don't make me hurt you. Dae-jung smiled. I appreciate that. But I gave my word that humanity would complete all 7 trials. I can't back down now. Then I'm sorry, said Valak. He moved into a fighting stance. Dae-jung didn't take a fighting stance. He just stood there, hands loose at his sides. The bell rang. The fight began. Valak moved with the speed of a predator, closing the distance in a heartbeat. His first strike was carefully measured, hard enough to look impressive, but not hard enough to kill. He pulled his punch at the last second. Dae-jung rolled with it, letting the impact push him back rather than fighting it. He hit the ground and rolled, coming up several feet away. You know how to fall, observed Valak. Good. That will help you survive longer. I was a soldier before I was a diplomat, said Dae-jung. He was breathing hard already. I know how to take a hit. Valak attacked again. This time Dae-jung didn't try to dodge. He blocked, redirecting the force rather than stopping it. It was basic martial arts, the kind taught to beginners. But it worked. You're not fighting to win, said Valak. Why? Because I can't win, said Dae-jung honestly. You're stronger, faster, and more skilled. If this were a real fight, I'd be dead already. Then yield. There's no shame in knowing when you're beaten. There's also no lesson in quitting, said Dae-jung. They circled each other. The crowd watched in confusion. This wasn't a fight. It was a conversation with violence. Why are you here, Ambassador? Asked Valak. Really? Because I need to understand you, said Dae-jung. The Concordance thinks this trial is about combat, about proving strength. But I don't think that's what it's really about. Valak struck again. Dae-jung blocked, but this time he spoke while defending. You've been the Concordance champion for 50 years. That's a long time to be unbeaten, a long time to be alone. I'm not alone. I'm honored. You're isolated, corrected Dae-jung. He ducked under a swing. No one can spar with you because they might lose to the champion. No one can truly befriend you because you represent something bigger than yourself. You're not Valak the person. You're Valak the unbeaten. That's got to be lonely. For the first time, Valak hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. Keep fighting, he said quietly. They continued. But something had changed. Valok's attacks were still powerful, but they were also careful. He was testing Dae-jung, but not trying to hurt him. "My species has a saying," Dae-jung said between breaths. "It's lonely at the top. The better you are, the fewer people understand you. The more you achieve, the more separate you become from everyone else." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you're tired," said Dae-jung. 50 years is a long time to be a symbol. You've served the Concordance with honor. You've proven your strength 1,000 times, but who proves their strength to you? Who challenges you in a way that matters? Valok stopped attacking. He stood there, all 4 arms lowered. "What do you want from me, human?" "I want to give you a choice," said Dae-jung. "You can beat me. It would be easy. You'd remain the champion. Humanity would fail the final trial. But nothing would change for you. You'd still be the unbeaten. Still alone. Still a symbol. Or you can teach me. Really teach me. Share what you know. In 50 years, you must have learned things about combat, about honor, about life that no one else understands. Don't let that wisdom die with you. Pass it on." Valok was silent for a long moment. The crowd waited. Billions of beings across the galaxy held their breath. "You want me to yield," Valok finally said, "to admit defeat so humanity can win?" "No," said Dae-jung firmly. "I want you to be free. The trial isn't about me beating you. It's about wisdom, about understanding when strength isn't the answer. You've proven your strength for 50 years. That's done. The question now is, what comes next for you?" Valok looked down at his claws. They had shed blood in hundreds of battles. They had defended the Concordance's honor. They had made him a legend. "I'm tired," he admitted quietly. "So tired." "Then rest," said Dae-jung. "You've earned it. There's honor in knowing when to step down. There's wisdom in choosing peace over endless battle." Valok raised his head. His eyes met Dae-jung's. For the first time in 50 years, someone had seen him. Not as a champion, not as a symbol, just as a person who was tired and wanted to rest. "The trial of combat is not won by defeating the opponent," Valok announced. His voice carried across the arena. "It's won by understanding the opponent, by seeing past the surface to the truth beneath. Ambassador Park has done this. He wins not through strength, but through wisdom." He knelt. It was a gesture of respect, not submission. "I yield, not in defeat, but in recognition. Humanity has passed the final trial." The arena erupted in noise. Some species cheered, others protested. But in the Concordance chambers, Tholnax stood slowly. "Enough," he said. His voice cut through the chaos. "The trials are complete. Humanity has succeeded. All 7 challenges met and overcome." Velkith turned to him, anger in his voice. "They didn't fight properly. The humans should have understood the true nature of the trial," interrupted Tholnax. "And he did. The trial was never about victory in combat. It was about wisdom, about knowing when combat isn't necessary. Valok has guarded our honor for 50 years, waiting for someone wise enough to see that. Ambassador Park saw it." He looked around the chamber at all the assembled species. "Humanity has shown us something we forgot. We became so focused on logic and efficiency that we lost sight of what really matters: innovation, empathy, persistence. The ability to see solutions that logic alone cannot find." "They're primitive," protested Velkith. "They're different," corrected Tholnax. "And perhaps that's what the Concordance needs. We've been the same for too long. The same solutions, the same approaches, the same thinking. Humanity brings variation. They bring new perspectives. They remind us that there are many ways to solve problems." He turned to the broadcasting screen where Dae-jung stood in the arena, helping Valok to his feet. "The Concordance votes on humanity's membership. All in favor?" The vote wasn't unanimous. Some species still had doubts, but it didn't matter. The majority voted yes. Humanity was now a full member of the Galactic Concordance. Back in the arena, Daejung shook Valok's hand. All four of them. "What will you do now?" Daejung asked. "Rest," said Valok. "For the first time in 50 years, I'll rest. Maybe travel. See the galaxy without fighting. Would humanity accept a visitor?" "We'd be honored," said Daejung. News of humanity's success spread across Earth faster than light. Cities erupted in celebration. People danced in the streets. Children looked up at the stars and dreamed of the day they'd travel among them. On the Indomitable, the crew gathered to watch the final vote. When it came through, Hyunwoo cheered so loud it hurt everyone's ears. Jiwoo cried happy tears. Taeyang just grinned and said, "I knew we could do it." 3 months later, Daejung stood in the same concordance chamber where it had all begun. But this time, he wasn't petitioning. This time, he was welcoming. A new species stood before the council, nervous and hopeful, asking to join. They were young, barely a century in space. The elder races looked skeptical. "The trials are difficult," one counselor warned. "They are," agreed Daejung. "But here's what I learned. The Concordance doesn't need you to be perfect. It doesn't need you to be like everyone else. It needs you to be yourself. Bring us your perspective, your solutions, your variations on the problems we all face." He smiled at the young species representative. "Yes, go ahead. I'd be happy to see a few more variations. Show us what your people can do." The representative looked less nervous now, hopeful. Behind Daejung, the human delegation sat with representatives from dozens of other species. Next to him stood Valok, who had become Earth's first alien ambassador. Across the chamber, Tholnax watched with what might have been satisfaction. The galaxy was changing, not because humanity had conquered it, but because humanity had reminded everyone that there were infinite ways to solve a problem, infinite perspectives to consider, infinite variations to explore. And sometimes the best answer to a challenge was simply, "Yes, go ahead. I'd be happy to see a few more variations."